Hey guys, Bub here, and today we're doing a very special restoration. About 5 years ago, I uploaded a video titled Rest in Peace, iPhone 4S.
See if my iPhone 4S works. So, ooh yeah, the camera's not gonna survive. And it's not booting up.
This device would not turn on due to water damage. I've tried multiple times to restore this phone, however each time I've failed and eventually I ripped cables. For this restoration, we'll be using an iCloud-locked iPhone 4S for parts. This is the device that I started my channel with, and I used this device for about a year back in 2015. I decided to do this restoration because I hit 1,000 subscribers on my channel. Thank you all for 1,000 subscribers, and here is the 1,000 subscriber restoration. To start this restoration, we need to remove the two pentalobe screws on the bottom of the iCloud-locked iPhone 4S. Unlike modern iPhones, this device does not have adhesive holding the screen or the back in place, meaning all we need to do is remove these two screws. After pushing up on the back glass and removing it, we can make sure that the phone is turned off. Now, we have to remove the battery connector. There are two screws and a grounding clip on the battery connector. When you remove the battery connector, the grounding clip will most likely fall out, so make sure to grab that with tweezers. To disconnect the battery, use a plastic pry tool. Do not use metal, as you have a risk of shorting out your battery, and as I plan on reusing this battery, I would like to keep it in good order. Now I accidentally ripped the battery pull tab, which basically allows us to remove the battery without prying up. Trying to use tweezers to remove this didn't work, so with a little bit of off-screen magic and a plastic pry tool, I was able to remove the battery without bending it. As I said, I wanted to reuse this battery, so I made sure to be very careful with it. Next up is to remove the two Phillips head 00 screws, which secure the dock cover connector in place. We can now disconnect the dock connector from the motherboard. Doing so with a plastic spudger will make sure that we don't damage anything. Pulling the connector away from the motherboard reveals the slight adhesive that Apple used to adhere it down. Removing these two Phillips head screws will allow us to remove the speaker from the bottom of the device. On the dock connector, there's another connector where the home button plugs into. All you have to do is lift up that little lever and then remove the very fragile iPhone home button connector. Now, if you rip this, all you have to do is replace the home button and you won't lose any home button functionality like newer iPhones. Now that the connection to the home button has been removed, we can start removing the dock connector. There's two Phillips head screws. Notice a trend with all the Phillips head screws? The new Apple should take some advice from old Apple. Now we can use our plastic spudger again to lift up the cable that runs to the dock connector. This is again lightly adhered down, but not adhered down as much as the new iPhone batteries, so it's easily removable. Now on the iPhone 4S we're restoring, we can do the same thing by removing the dock connector. The reason I'm not just swapping the motherboards from the iCloud locked phone to the broken phone is because I would like to keep the phone cosmetically the same as it was 5 years ago. This is because this is what I started my channel with, and it's very special. Even though it has a few scratches and a corner crack on the front, it'll do. Taking a look at the water damaged dock connector, we can see some corrosion on a pin near the microphone. This should not be there, of course, and that's probably what's preventing this phone from turning on, besides the fact that the whole thing was water damaged. Now, we're reinstalling the water damaged board into the frame. Again, we're not screwing it in, as I'm making sure that everything will boot up and function before we continue the restoration. Before this video, I took the motherboard out, and as you can see, some shields are missing. I removed these and will be putting them back on later. I scrubbed the entire motherboard in rubbing alcohol so we can remove any corrosion and guck on the board to make sure that it turns on. Once we reconnect the dock connector, we can use our tweezers and remove any screws that were left inside of the iPhone 4S frame. This is the moment of truth. This device had not been powered on in 5 years. I was very skeptical about making sure this phone worked. And to my surprise, we got an Apple logo. Now that this phone had been powered on after years of me not being able to see what was on it, I was very eager to see what I had on it. As you can see, the home screen has a ton of folders on it, which are weirdly named. At this time, my wrist was broken and I had a cast on, and I randomly pressed characters to get the random folder names. As you can see, this is a 16GB iPhone 4S, which is on iOS 9.1, which is not the latest version this phone can support. I do not plan on updating this device. Opening the YouTube Capture app, there's a ton of videos I never released that are on this phone. Maybe one day we can edit them on my second channel. Now that I know the dock connector we installed works and the phone turns on, we can now screw and secure the dock connector into place. Again, now that we know everything works, we can remove all connections to the water-damaged motherboard and then remove the board. This is so we can replace the broken cables on the top. Moving back over to the iCloud-locked iPhone 4S, we can start to remove the motherboard covers and the motherboard. This is so we can access the parts that we need for the restored phone. Every screw on this cover is a different size, so make sure you know which screws goes where, as you could risk damaging the motherboard. We'll be using this newer camera. As you saw in the beginning, the original camera for the 4S had moisture in it and may not produce good pictures. We're going to be removing the motherboard so we have easier access to parts at the top, such as the power button. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. When opening the SIM card tray, I realized there's a SIM card inside this device. I tried calling the number on the SIM card, however, it was out of service. The first cable I ripped on the water-damaged iPhone 4S was the front-facing camera, so we'll need to remove the front-facing camera bracket, and then we can easily pull away at the front-facing camera. The only other cable I ripped on the water-damaged iPhone 4S was for the power button and the proximity sensor. Removing these screws was a nightmare, considering the fact I had to work with the display cables being right under it, and with my thick iFixit screwdriver, this did not make the job as easy as I had wished. After finally removing both screws on the power button, we can now remove the cover over the proximity sensor. We just have to pry up on this little piece to get the whole unit loose, and now, with a little bit of light prying on the cables, we can remove the power button and proximity sensor unit. We now have our parts for the water-damaged 4S. Here are all the parts we disassembled out of the iCloud-locked iPhone 4S. This will be everything we need to restore the water-damaged iPhone 4S. We have to remove the front-facing camera, proximity sensor, and power button on the water-damaged 4S. We can now install the fully functioning power button and proximity sensor into the iPhone 4S that was water damaged. We'll get the front camera installed later. After installing the power button and the proximity sensor, we can start removing some rusty screen screws. These screws are meant to keep the screen held in place. However, as you can see, they got rusty due to being in water. We're going to be replacing these with non-rusty screws from the iCloud locked device. We can now install the cover that goes over the proximity sensor, and then we can install the front camera. After connecting all the connectors back up to the motherboard, we can insert the grounding pin and install the back camera. Before we seal anything up, I have to make sure that both the front and back cameras work, and as you can see, they work perfectly fine. We're now ready to screw the board back into the frame. We'll remove the back camera, put the grounding clip back in, and screw it in place. After reinserting the back camera, we're now ready to screw the rest of the motherboard back into place with Phillips head and flathead screwdrivers. Now we can put the bottom speaker back in, screw it in, and then screw the connector cover back in at the top. After screwing everything in, I make sure that the phone turns on and we didn't over tighten anything. We're now ready to install the battery. After inserting it over the already existing adhesive because it's still sticky, we can press it in place to make sure the phone turns on without any problems. And of course, the phone turns on running off of battery energy. So, we screw it in place, making sure to insert the grounding clip. We can now take the black glass, put it into place, and slide it down. We can now screw in the two pentalobe screws at the bottom. And this concludes our 1000 subscriber restoration. We've successfully restored this water-damaged iPhone 4S. I'm very thankful that I was able to do this restoration for 1000 subscribers. Thank you all for watching, and if you're new around here, please subscribe to the channel to support us out. Thank you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.